call to order the open meeting for Tuesday, December 22nd, and ask the Commission Secretary for information on today's agenda.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, December 17th, 2020, and each has informed me there's no need to discuss those minutes.
Move we approve the minutes of Thursday, December 17th, 2020.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Each commissioner has independently reviewed the agenda, and each has informed me there's no need to discuss the notices associated with agenda items 2 through 6, or the suggested minute associated with agenda item 7, opening an investigation and directing the parties to submit initial briefs on the jurisdictional issue within 30 days of service of the notice of investigation, and submitting reply briefs within 15 days after the filing of initial briefs.
Move we approve the notice of investigation associated with agenda item 2.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Move we approve the notices of proceeding associated with agenda items 3 through 6.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
For agenda item 7, I move we open an investigation and direct the parties to submit initial briefs on the jurisdictional issue within 30 days of service of the notice of investigation, and submit reply briefs within 15 days after the filing of initial briefs in docket 9300 SI 125. And due to the late filing, some have already gotten a head start on that.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that takes us to agenda item 8, which is docket 6680-TE-106. This is Wisconsin Power and Light Company's application for approval of an arrears management program. This particular program, the company proposes to automatically enroll eligible low-income residential customers into the program, and those customers would receive an initial 25% reduction in their arrears balance. They would then receive a 1/12 reduction in arrears for each consecutive month that they pay the current monthly bill. A customer who misses 2 consecutive payments will be removed from the program, and to be eligible, a customer is required to have received Wisconsin Home Energy Assistance Program funds in the current heating season and have arrears of $300 or more that are 60 or more days past due. The company indicates that both the dollar threshold for eligibility and the percentage of arrears forgiveness are subject to change, and they commit to notify commission staff of any changes to either of those elements. I'll just say from the get-go that our staff did a tremendous job in taking this filing and really digging in and asking some questions to fill in some of the information that wasn't in the initial application. Customers who are enrolled will be enrolled automatically, and they will receive a letter from the company. And there was some talk about outreach and whether or not the communication should be made available in different languages. And based on the comments that we received from the company, they appear to be open to modifying their enrollment and removal letters to include Spanish language text. So once a customer is enrolled, if they miss a payment, they receive a warning letter. And then if they miss 2 consecutive payments, they will be removed from the program. If they're removed from the program, the customers then have to pay that remaining arrears balance, and then they're able to enroll again if they incur new arrears and they meet the eligibility requirements. So as of November 1st of this year, 4,029 of Power and Light's customer accounts met the eligibility criteria. And they did, commission staff provided a little bit of background on low income programs, particularly arrears forgiveness programs that have been approved by the commission in the past. All of them are a little bit different. I think this is a case where it's not one size fits all. I personally worked on the low-income pilot program for We Energies, and I'm pretty familiar with what the findings of the low-income task force were back a number of years. And as a general matter, the goal is if you can get customers to pay on a consistent basis, even if it's not necessarily the full current amount, but if they get into a habit of paying, in the long run, that has benefits, not just to the customer for keeping up on their balances, but for other customers as a whole, because it reduces costs associated with disconnection and reconnection. So I think that this is a good start. There are changes that I would make, but I understand that this is sort of a first step that the company is proposing to take. And so I read the comments provided by Cub and by the Urban League, and I just have a couple of modifications that I would make. Again, I think we continue to try to navigate uncertain times, and this type of a program is a good start to start modifying and incenting the right behavior, which in the long run benefits all customers because it has the effect of reducing costs for the company. And when you set up the right metrics and the performance measures, then you are able to pinpoint what those savings are for other customers as the costs to the company get lower. So the first question that we have in front of us is related to that correspondence that I mentioned in the beginning. And as I said, the company said that they didn't have problems revising the letters to include Spanish language text and to share those revised letters with staff prior to implementation. So I guess I'm sort of at a modified Alt 2. I wouldn't require it as an order point, but I would sort of take them at their word that they know that they need to include Spanish language text. And I wouldn't necessarily hold up approval of the program, waiting to receive that. It's not going to be that difficult. So I would, I guess it's a modified Alt 2. I wouldn't require it, but I would ask them to simply include Spanish language and share that with staff prior to implementation. So Commissioner Nowak, I'll turn it over to you.
So that kind of is requiring it if they have to share it with staff, though.
Well, yeah, I just don't want it to be, I don't want it to unnecessarily hold up implementation.
Right. No, I get it. But I mean, I'll take them at their word. I don't think we need to require it. I have other concerns about the program, just that it's laudable to keep moving forward and trying to address this problem, but this is close, but I just don't think it's ready here. And I can discuss some of those concerns, I think, as we move forward, and maybe with some changes I can get there. But there are some fundamental issues, I think, that need to be addressed. I think there needs to be a little more meat on the bones here to understand how this will work. I know our staff did a lot of work too with them, but at first I don't understand what about their existing mechanisms to help customers who are behind on payments are not working. So I kind of like, what is the problem we're trying to solve? What do you have now that is not working? And I don't have an understanding of that. And I also, there is as you described the program, if a customer successfully completes this, they have 100% of their arrears forgiven. In the other programs, I think there is to varying degrees, there's usually some type of requirement that the customer pays something of the arrears. I think in most cases, I think it is important for customers who are behind on their bills to pay at least something of those arrears. It sends the wrong message to others who have been struggling to pay their bills, and they don't get that arrearage forgiven, and who are going through a down payment program. And I just struggle with the customer not having any skin in the game here. So I think that I would prefer to see something where a customer has to at least pay something of what they owe and not just start paying their bills going forward. So that's just, and I can discuss some of them other concerns. Like I said, I think this is close. I don't know that we need to do it today. I know they want to get it done now, but I would much prefer to see a more detailed program come forward rather than, you know, and even they said, well, let's approve it now and we'll figure out the specifics later. I'm not comfortable with that. You know, we're in a better, the state is in a better, like, what is, again, the urgency to get this done now? The state is in a better fiscal position as far as, you know, unemployment's at 5% right now. So again, what about the existing programs when we've had unemployment at 5% before is not working? People are working. We need to get them using the existing programs we have and create new ones. So obviously you can tell I have some hesitancy moving forward on this, but we can continue to discuss throughout the different options.
Okay. Commissioner Heber?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I was looking at this similar to you were, Madam Chair, that this, I think, is a good first step. We have an unprecedented pandemic where it's good to see unemployment back down, but we had a period here of the last 9 months that have been incredibly difficult for a lot of people. There's been programs in place, unemployment programs, federal programs, but they are not necessarily, they are not all encompassing, right? And I think the Urban League's letter speaks precisely to that point, that, you know, their constituency, the people they work with, they have a lot of people still struggling. So to me, this is a good step in that direction. I'm not as familiar as you are, Madam Chair, with the We Energies program. Got a chance to learn more about that here. But I will be supporting this program. I think at the end, whether it's a pilot or not, that's one thing I'm looking forward to hearing from you both. So I will be supporting it today. As to the specific item on page 8, the correspondence, I was in the same spot as you, Madam Chair, so I don't know how that gets worded. Maybe requirement is a little too heavy-handed here on this. The company has said they will do it, and Spanish is one. I think translation services more broadly, just making sure that people for English, where English isn't their first language, that they know they can understand what this program is about. So I would join you at the language that you described.
Yeah, so I guess it's a filing requirement. It's not a requirement for approval. I don't know if
that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I think we'll just go ahead and go through the commission alternatives. Commissioner Nowak, and we'll just kind of see, you know, we'll kind of talk this. We'll talk this out.
Okay.
So the next one sort of fits in with the language requirement, or the language change, and it's that there's not so the company is saying that there's some concern that they might not respond to outreach calls. And so again, it was a little light on details. And I think to the extent that there can be coordinated outreach, that coordinated outreach should occur. There are a lot of agencies at the local level that are very good at this type of outreach and this type of education process. So the company actually supported this suggestion by staff that we require them to provide that outreach and education every year, so that the different agencies, the community-based agencies, understand what the program is, and they can provide guidance to customers. Because a lot of times there are agencies that have good long-standing relationships with their community members, and community members look to those agencies for education and for information about programs that span the spectrum of services available to them. So for this one, I'm at Alt 1. I think it also can only improve, because those agencies oftentimes then serve as sort of a checkpoint and can provide feedback to the company that they're hearing from those agencies' participants. So for this one, I'm at Alt 1. Commissioner Nowak?
Yeah, I mean, I think with any program they have that is going to assist people, they should be working. I would just assume they're already doing this. So they also said that's what they do. I'm okay with alternative 1.
Yep. I too am at alternative 1 for this one.
Okay. The next one gets to something that I was struggling with. It has to do with re-enrollment, and the company was pretty adamant that putting a limitation on either the number of re-enrollments or the number of removals would add costs to their billing system. And this one, at the end of it all, I'm going to agree with CUB's proposed modification. I think experience shows that limiting the number of times a customer can qualify for this type of a program leads to more consistent and positive payment behavior. But given the timing and the potential billing system impacts, I'm okay with not putting the requirement on right now and taking CUB's suggestion to include it as part of the metrics and the reporting requirements. So for this one, I'm at Alt 4, but modified to require reporting on this information when we get to talking about the metrics and the reporting requirements. Commissioner Nowak?
Yeah, and again, this is why I think we need to develop this more before we approve anything. I think there should be some either a limitation on the number of times or a waiting period, particularly if you're talking about 100% arrearage forgiveness. So I don't agree that this is one where let's start the ball rolling and figure it out what works best later. Again, I think with more discussion and we can, with company, with other interveners, we can do this differently, but this is again why I think we shouldn't be approving something today. So I'm at either alternative 1 or 2.
Okay. Commissioner Huebner?
I was also at the CUB version of modified alternative 4. And I'm looking at this as getting started. I'm looking at this as a 1 year, start, and we're going to collect the information. The period of the arrearage going away is over this period of 1 year. And so I think before we really are in the situation where we have to deal with either removal or re-enrollments, we're going to have that information within this year. So that's why I was at alternative 4 here.
Okay. Yep. That then delves right into program metrics and reporting. Staff came up with a number of reporting requirements. I think I'm I agree with you, Commissioner Hebner. I am prepared to approve this as a pilot, as a 1-year pilot. And I would ask the company to come back to us next year and report on what they have found. And I think that the suggested metrics that are listed on page 17 of our memo, I think that those should all be included. And then I would just add to number 7, the attrition and re-enrollment numbers that we just talked about, that that I think are going to be a crucial part of the analysis of this program and whether it will continue to move forward or whether it needs, complete overhaul. So for this one, and the company too was amenable to this. So for this one, I would be at Alt 1, requiring the company to work with staff, but I do think that numbers 1 through 6 should be included, and then I would add attrition and re-enrollment numbers. Commissioner Nowak?
Yeah, I think those are all things that should be done ahead of time. We can't obviously know before how many people are going to enroll, but I think as a condition, those make sense. I guess I just want to clarify then what makes it a pilot, because it's not going to, is it automatically going to expire in a year unless we reapprove, or so what then about this makes it a pilot if it's not, because it's already limited to its subset of people who are eligible. Are we going to make them affirmatively ask for extension after a year, or what is the condition reporting making it, how does it make it different than any other program we have where we require regular reporting?
I guess I was thinking that we would put an end date. I guess my thought was that I would give them a year to offer this and then come back to us a year from now with a report. And then they can determine, do they want to ask us if they can continue to offer it? Do they want to modify it and ask us to approve those modifications? Or are they going to abandon it, take what they've learned, maybe reconvene something like the low income task force again, and come up with a different solution? So in my mind, I was thinking that there would be a date certain upon which they'd be required to come back to us and tell us what their next step is going to be.
Okay. So I was okay with the conditions.
Okay. Commissioner Hebner?
Yep, I will join you at alternative 1 with your 2 additions to number 7.
Okay.
As you stated.
Okay. And then the program overall, I think I just explained where I am. So I'm not going to repeat myself.
We have to do the accounting treatment. The accounting treatment.
Commissioner Nowak, did you have a position on the overall program? Were you at a pilot as well, or at not approval, which is not listed, but?
Yeah, it's not there. I guess based on our conversation here, I wish I could approve something today, but I just don't think it's ready we've even used the words, this is a start. There's not a lot of details. The cost benefit analysis is very, very speculative. I just would like to see some more information, something with more where the customer has to pay something of the arrears. So I can't, not the way it's presented today. I think there's time. I don't think it needs to be done today. So I will not be approving this one today.
Okay. Okay. Commissioner Hebner?
And I was at alternative 3. And I think the way you described it, Chair Bach, is good, because I think we want to get this started. We want to hear back from the company and see if it worked as proposed, if there's changes they would recommend. We do have a reasonable sense based on the We Energies program that is somewhat similar to this, that this program can work, and your personal experience, Madam Chair, with that program. So I think we have a sense that this is beneficial, that and WPL doesn't offer something like this. Well, I think it's a good step in the right direction, and I will be joining you at all three.
Okay. And the final decision we
Madam
have.
Chair?
Yeah.
I could just have one quick clarification. I think I heard you mention an end date, so it would be Alt 3. It would continue for 1 year, report back, and at that 1 year, WP&L would have to apply for continuation or modification.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Yes. Then the final decision is the accounting. The company has requested deferral and escrow accounting treatment. I think that's consistent with the type of accounting and treatment that we would approve for this type of a program. So for this one, I'm at Alt 1. I would approve their deferral and escrow accounting treatment through the end of next year. Commissioner Nowak.
Yeah, I think we, consistent with how we're treating the funds during the moratorium, I think we have to do that here. Yeah, I'm alternative 1.
Okay. Commissioner Huebner.
Yep, I'm at alternative 1 as well. And just a final point on the reporting, which I think you captured my position as well. Cindy, is, hopefully the reporting will come in time that the program can be continued without a lag, I guess, is what I would like to see as we look ahead. So if it's going to continue. So thanks.
Okay.
Just one more clarification. I don't know that I heard where Commissioner Nowak was on the first of the alternatives about the customer correspondence, which I understand Chair Vach, you and Commissioner Huebner are at a filing requirement consistent with Power and Light's representation. Commissioner Nowak, were you joining that?
No, I trust that they'll do it. I was at alternative 2.
Okay. I don't have anything. If staff, any other clarifications needed here? No, Christy's shaking her head.
Great. Should I make a motion?
Yes.
The commission accepted, as we discussed today, the application of Wisconsin Power and Light Company for approval of its proposed arrears management program.
Second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Okay. So now we move on to agenda item number 9, which is docket 5 UI-120. This is our COVID-19 docket, and there were just a couple of what I sort of consider to be cleanup items since we're getting to the end of the year. Some of them we did not pick up. I think it was an oversight the last time we had this docket in front of us. So it relates to the continued waiver of the credit card fees, the delegation authority that we granted previously on the tolling and extension requests, as well as granting temporary tariff waiver requests. So for all 3 of these, I'm at Alt 3. I think if I've learned anything in the last 9 months, it's to not plan anything and to try and build in as much flexibility as possible. So for that reason, for all 3 of these, I'm at alternative 3, which is it's until further order of us or until the utility makes a different filing. So for credit card convenience waivers, I think it's an important tool to help promote bill payment. And I would allow utilities with that temporary credit card convenience fee waiver to continue on a going forward basis until further order of us. Commissioner Nowak.
Well, I'm in the same spot on all of them, but not all 3. I'm at Alt 2 on all of them. I think it is important to put an end date in here. We have to have markers out there. We have to, I think, I mean, that's when the moratorium ends. We have got to start signaling when we're going to return to some normalcy on some things. And if we want to make some of these permanent, so be it, but we've got to then take it up the right way. I think leaving it hanging out there there's no greater benefit to it. I think keeping a marker out there just kind of keeps everyone a little more honest. So I'm at all two in all of them.
Okay, I'll just respond. I'm actually maybe a little bit more optimistic than you, so I was hoping that we would get to this before April, which is why I didn't want to extend it out to April necessarily, because I know that we're going to be talking about this, in January, and I didn't want it to be kind of a stumbling block if we decide, if we come back in March and hopefully, fingers crossed, things have changed and that we feel really strongly that we need to kind of start getting the ball rolling. I was coming at it from that perspective. So I just wanted to clarify.
Okay. Yeah, I read that backwards. I thought we were keeping it longer. So I appreciate your optimism.
It's about all I have left. Commissioner Heber. Oh,
yeah. So I don't know. We'll see. Commissioner Heber, yeah. Where are you at?
Yeah, I was at alternative 3 as well. Just knowing that we are coming back, certainly in March when we see more comprehensive plans and we talk about rolling a lot of things, these items are going to come back up. And my thought was just knowing that they're not going away and it's not indefinite, but just based on when we would bring this back up, when we would make these decisions. I was going to leave myself that flexibility. So that's where I was at.
I can join you guys there. I mean, we can always change our orders later. So it's not like if we lock ourselves in, we hold the keys, we can unlock it. That's one beauty here. But I guess folks have heard us that we're on a bit of optimism here and hopefully it'll be before April.
Yes, that is the hope. Okay.
Okay. All right, hang on then. I will move in docket 5 UI 120 that we extend the delegation to grant the deadline for tolling and extension requests for tariff waiver provisions and credit card convenience fee waivers until further order of this commission. You're on mute.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Agenda item 10, docket 1330-ER-104. This is an interesting one. This is Consolidated Water Power Company's test year 2021 electric rate case. Consolidated has less than 100 customers, and the majority of its revenues are from 3 paper mill customers. What makes this even more interesting is that one of the paper mill owners, Verso, is also the corporate parent of Consolidated. Consolidated's rates were last set in 2016. The company originally filed this rate case in November of 19 based on a 2020 test year. And then they filed an amended application in June of this year to modify it to reflect the 2021 test year. And it also coincides with the beginning of a new long-term PPA with Wisconsin Power and Light Company. The forecasted 2021 revenue deficiency when they filed was about $4.3 million, or a 9.9% increase. And that was primarily driven by proposed capital investments. About a week after the company filed its amended application, Verso announced that it was idling its Wisconsin Rapids mill. The anticipated lost revenue from that mill's idling added $2.5 million to the company's revenue deficiency and brought it to a $7.2 million deficiency, or 20.4% increase. The company has pointed out that even if we approve the full increase, their industrial rates would remain the lowest among the Wisconsin investor-owned utilities. We've heard from not only their parent company / customer, but we've heard from their the other owners of the mills, Pixel and ND Paper. And those two customers would see the larger portions of fixed costs be passed on to them. Before we get into this, I want to thank staff. I mean, the work that they did as this application took its long and winding road was really good, really thorough. And in particular, I just want to acknowledge Mike Bates for his professionalism and his decorum. I know that he faced pretty extensive cross-examination on the stand. I know it's not easy to be a witness, but I just want to thank him for his professionalism. We saw some pretty strong arguments by the two industrial customers consultant, Mr. Gorman. In particular, he took some issue with the terms of the PPA that the company negotiated, and how the terms of that PPA, the way that he thought they should have gone. I wasn't particularly persuaded by Mr. Gorman's testimony. I think at the end of the day, what the company has done and what it continues to do is trying to balance the reliability needs of its customers. And it's such a unique customer base that it has, but it's trying to balance that reliability while also mitigating risk. And so as we go through this, I just want to acknowledge that this is a unique company, it's a unique customer base. And that's not to minimize the economic uncertainty and the really unfortunate economic situations that the paper mills find themselves in. So I don't know if you guys want to say anything initially, or if you just want to dive right into it. But I think it's important in this particular case to kind of set the stage because it is pretty unique. So I'll ask my colleagues if they have anything they'd like to say before we get to the decision matrix. Commissioner Noah?
Thanks, and you set the stage well. This is tough, and the one we do after this today, is not any easier. So we've got a series of tough decisions here, and you're right. The ownership of this is about the fourth case I've seen with them, and it's different players every time, and players then changing sides of the field, and it can be confusing to figure out who's on each team each time. But lot of information put here in this case. The proposed increase here is stark, and it's difficult at times to then be charged with recognition of those facts of a difficult situation. And you noted that the cloud hanging over this case is the idling of one of those mills. And, the utility here is saying that the rate increase is mostly a function of reduced sales, not increased costs. So again, so unfortunate that it impacts the utilities, the customers, the community, the employees and their families. The uniqueness of this, though, doesn't take away the need for us to apply our usual principles that we have to do here in just and reasonable rates. It just makes it harder.
Mm-hmm. Yes, without question. Commissioner Huebner?
Yeah, I too would say this is a really challenging case for a really challenging situation. We understand how important the paper industry is to our state's economy. And And when you have a utility like this that is really 3 large customers is 99% of their sales and 99% of their load and their requirements. And to they haven't lost entirely, but that mill is down to a fraction of what it used to use. It becomes that game of whack-a-mole. I think one of the things that I took to heart is the witness from the paper companies, some of his arguments, and one of the balances that I'll try to be achieving today is understanding, if another mill goes away, how much more challenging that is down the road, right? And so I'll be looking to try to balance to some degree the arguments that we heard in this case today.
Okay. Thank you both. So here we go. We tackle issue number 1, which is what's the appropriate treatment for the Rapids mill that was announced to be idled. So commission staff has recommended that any electric revenues received from that mill above what's included in authorized rates be tracked, net of purchase power costs in a liability. The company then responded and said, well, how about we allow it to go both ways? So that regulatory account would include any changes in sales and costs from future operations, which means it's a liability, a regulatory liability if the mill resumes operations, and a regulatory asset if the mill permanently shuts down. My understanding is that regardless of where the mill is from an operational standpoint, they still have a requirement to take a certain amount of energy. So that doesn't go away, which means the company is going to continue to provide that. So I was in agreement with the modified alternative 1, where I would include all changes in sales and costs from future operations of that mill. So set up a regulatory liability if it resumes operations and a regulatory asset if the mill permanently shuts down. Then there was this option of requiring a limited reopener related to the sales revenue, depending on what happens with the mill. And I think when we go through, it comes up and it's a little more clear in issue 1C. So I would also agree with what the company proposed in issue 1C, which is file a limited reopener, a partial rate reopener within 1 year of a significant change in the operational status of the mill. In front of us, we have the ability or the suggestion that we could require them to notify us within 30 days and then to file the limited reopener. I just think 30 days is pretty tight. And so for this one, I would do a modified Alt 1 with the reg liability and the reg asset. And then I would add a modified Alt 3. And instead of 30 days, I would put that 30 days to 1 year. Commissioner Nowak.
Hang on a second. So are you just addressing 1A? 1A, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, they're kind of...
They're the same, they're connected.
Yeah.
So, okay, I think we got to be fair here, and I agree with the modified Alt 1. We create a reg liability if there's a resumption and an asset if there is a shutdown. I think that's the right answer on that one. So modified Alt 1 for that. I didn't think that requiring, I thought then since if we are there, at least 2 of us, there isn't so much of a need to then make a filing requirement, because I think if there is another substantial change in operations, pretty sure they're going to be here, especially if there's a reg asset hanging out there. So I just didn't think it was necessary, but I could, if you're saying they have to do it within a year, I think 30 days is too tight. I can join you at a year, but I don't know that it's completely necessary to require it. I think they're gonna need to do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Commissioner Hebner?
I was at the same spot on alternative 1 with the modified addition of the regulatory asset. Looking at alternative 3, the way that's worded, I guess the first part of that, require Consolidated to notify the commission within 30 days of the Wisconsin Rapids Mill resuming operations. I guess I would keep that 30 days for a notice just of the mill's status. And then, so I guess I would keep that 30 days, but then if you're planning to add within a year filing a limited reopener, I was not there. I thought I guess I was going to address that issue in 1C with essentially a full rate application in years to come. But
Okay.
so I guess I would hold off myself on joining you on Alt 3, but perhaps suggest that it would be helpful to still have the 30 days of notice and then the 1 year of filing, if that's what you guys want to do, which is great.
Commissioner, okay, I see what you're saying. Commissioner Nowak, how do you feel about just notification of?
Yeah, I don't think, we don't typically have utilities notify us when a customer leaves. I know this is, again, a big one, but I don't think it's necessary for them to do the filing.
Okay. How about we just all agree at modified Alt 1, and then we can talk about any notification or need to do a limited reopener in 1C.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. All right. So for issue 1, we're all at the modified Alt 1. Okay. All right. So issue 1A then is appropriate carrying cost. Should we allow carrying costs to be applied on either the asset or the liability that's created? For this one, I think short-term debt rate is the appropriate rate. That's Alt 1. It's the peer group median short-term debt rate of 3.48%. Commissioner Nowak?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same spot.
Commissioner Hebner?
Yep, I'm at alternative 1.
Okay. Issue 1B, should we require Consolidated to provide monthly sales revenue reports and specified O&M data for the Wisconsin Rapids Mill? It's my understanding that the company is amenable to just working with staff to figure out how to calculate these O&M expenses, and that they are amenable to that they don't oppose Alt 1, and they're going to work on this O&M expenses by customer issue. So I'm at Alt 1. Commissioner Nowak?
Yeah, I agree. I think I didn't know if they raised the customer issue. Obviously, for things have to be filed confidentially and competitive purposes, they need to work with staff on that. And then, I don't even know if it needs to be monthly. I could go quarterly. I would also say they should work with staff on how often those need to be filed.
Okay. Commissioner Hebner?
Yeah, I was at alternative 1. The question I had was the O&M expenses. They say that they don't track them by customers. So my suggestion was going to be file the sales reporting and then work with staff on O&M. However, I think having the data by month is important. Commissioner Nowak, your idea of having it filed quarterly, I'm fine with that too, as long as it's got 3 months broken out in each quarterly report. So I don't know, Chair, if you have a thought on that.
Yeah, I think quarterly is fine. I think we require them to file the sales information, and then your suggested tweak, Commissioner Hebner, is to work with staff to figure out the O&M expenses, I think is fine. So I'm fine with that. I think we're all in agreement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. 1C, should we require them to file a rate case within 2 to 3 years of the date of the final decision? So of course, this is going back to the uncertainty related to the operation of the Rapids Mill. The company would agree to file a partial rate reopener. And this is where I was sort of headed in, I think it was 1A. Understanding that the ratepayers will be protected with the reg asset and the reg liability that we've just approved. But I do think that within a year of a significant change, it makes sense to have them come in. And Commissioner Nowak, I think your point is a good one, and that is just given the history and given the customer base and given the impact that the mills have, I don't know that it's necessary to require them to do so. I think that they will understand the need to come in. I'm going to end at Alt 3. I don't think we need to require it because I think that actual life experience is going to sort of drive this bus. So, Commissioner Nowak.
That's exactly where I was. The reality is it's going to happen, and we don't need to put things in orders that don't have to happen. So it's not necessary. I'm at Alt 3.
Yep. Okay, Commissioner Huebner.
I am too. I'm at alternative 3.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to talk about expenses, administrative and general salaries in particular. So this is issue 2A. So I'm assuming we don't need to do anything with issue 2, right? I mean, we just skip to 2A.
Yeah. Okay. 2 just kind of teed up the sub issues.
Okay. So for 2A, commission staff audited the books twice, and they agreed with the company's filed administrative and general salaries with no changes. So for this one, I'm at Alt 1. Commissioner Nowak?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the overall amount is significant, but then even the interveners conceded that the addition of staff was reasonable. So looks like we're just arguing about the 3% wage, inflation factor, which I didn't think the interveners showed was imprudent or unreasonable. So other than they didn't like it. So I'm at Alt 1.
Okay. Commissioner Huebner?
Yeah, I'll join you at Alt 1. Yep.
Okay. Issue 2B, what's the appropriate inflation rate? In general, they used a 2% inflationary escalator. The interveners suggested that escalator be removed. For this one, I agree with staff. I'm at Alt 1. I would accept their inflation escalator. Commissioner Nowak.
Yeah, again, it's something we typically see in this, and not just this case. There wasn't a showing that it was unreasonable or imprudent by the interveners. So Alt 1.
Okay, Commissioner Huebner.
Yeah, again, I'll join you at Alt 1.
Okay. Issue 2C. This is the first time we're going to talk about the affiliated interest agreement. This one is essentially uncontested because the applicant's consultant, Mr. Gorman, withdrew his criticism. And so we don't really have any basis to rely on the adjustment. So I'm at Alt 1. Commissioner Nowak.
Right. There was something raised in the briefs, but that's not evidence. So I'm at Alt 1.
Okay. Commissioner Huebner. Yeah,
this one was really puzzling because this is where I I'm starting to go down that track, and so I'll join you at alt 1. I'm not sure why he withdrew this. I think this was one of those where now you're really getting into Verso, which used to be just was a customer and an owner, and is now just an owner. And now there's a lot more money, $226,000 flowing between the utility and Verso. So I was actually at alternative 2. So I guess I'll dissent and be at alternative 2, actually.
Okay. That's a good segue to issue 3, and that is, should an independent audit of the consolidated Verso affiliated interest agreement be required? So the costs that are flowing back and forth between Verso and Consolidated are governed by a 2018 affiliated interest agreement. And these agreements are put in place to ensure that the parent isn't raiding the piggy bank of its utility subsidiaries. And so I have some concerns. There appears to be some increases in expenses. And I think it's not uncommon. We've done it before, where we have done an audit of the charges between the parent and the sub. And so for this one, I think our staff needs to take a deeper look into what's going on under the affiliated interest agreement. So for this one, I was at alt 3, where I would actually order both the audit of the charges and then periodic reporting of those charges, because I'm not necessarily confident that there's not more to unwind here. So I'm at alt 3. Commissioner Nowak?
Yeah, I think ordering an audit is entirely reasonable here. And again, this is a very unusual structure that we have. And as you noted, the recent cost shifts. So there's nothing wrong with looking under the hood and making sure things are flowing the way they should be. I was at alternative 1, though, because I just felt that the independent audit will be done by our staff, and whatever comes out of that audit, then they can suggest or, the periodic itemized reporting. So I was more at waiting till the audit's done, seeing if one of the recommendations is that type of reporting coming out of it. And then I also think we should, unless they're in, next year, if something goes haywire, we should strive to have this audit completed in time so the results can be reviewed and used for the next rate proceeding. So it should begin right away. So I was more at 1. Yeah, I was more at alternative 1, waiting until the audit findings and what they say about reporting and stuff.
Okay. You make a good point on timing. I also think that this has got to be completed prior to their next rate case filing so that the results can be folded in. Okay, Commissioner Huebner?
Yeah, I was at alternative 3 on this as well. That's where staff ended up. And as I started to go down before, what I saw in the record was, Verso is allocating this, their expenses across their business units. And as as Mills idle and CWP still around, they're just getting a higher pro rata share of the corporate's costs. And I don't think that's appropriate, or it's certainly not clear that that's appropriate if their staff is not growing and if their costs aren't increasing up to the parent company. So I was at alternative 3 here.
Okay, so I would propose, I'm going to stay at alt 3 because I agree with staff that it can help just maybe even in the interim, and maybe the result of the audit is those periodic periodic itemized reporting will no longer be necessary, but I'm going to stay at alt 3, and I'm just going to add that audit needs to be complete prior to the company's next rate case filing.
Yeah, unless they come in maybe for a reopener in
Right.
June or May, but I could probably join you on 3, but what do you guys mean by periodic? Monthly, quarterly, as get it? So
I mean, I think
probably
I would
wondering
defer
what
to
we mean by
staff.
periodic.
Yeah,
What's that?
I think I would defer to staff. I don't. In my mind, periodic means quarterly.
Yeah, I think quarterly is probably, I can join you if we're going to go quarterly. I think we should specify.
Commissioner Hebner, do you have thoughts on periodic?
I did not. Nope. I was leaning on staff as well. I'm fine with quarterly. I don't know if staff has an opinion. Martin, or
Yeah, no, I think quarterly is reasonable, and we can work with that. And, we'll work with them. Now that you've ordered it, we can work with them on exactly what the reporting would look like, but we can go with the quarterly reporting.
Okay. Issue 4 is uncontested. Issue 5 is uncontested. Issue 6 is where we now start talking about the PPA. And as I indicated at the beginning of our conversation, the purpose of sort of entering, so the Consolidated has a PPA to fill the gap of what they don't produce themselves through their hydro facilities. And I know that there's some confidential information in here, so I'm going to try and steer clear of the specifics, and I'm just going to make an overarching general statement, and that is that utilities enter into PPAs in order to try to balance risk with reliability. And I do agree with Mr. Gorman that short-term capacity agreements have a place in resource planning, but not to reliably serve customers over an extended period of time. So I was not persuaded by the issues that were taken with either the process by which the PPA was negotiated, nor do I agree with the assertion that short-term capacity agreement would be a better way to secure resources for this particular company. So for this one, I'm at alt 1. Commissioner Nowak?
Yeah, I agree. I thought the testimony by the utilities witness was more persuasive here. I thought Mr. Gorman was making a wrong comparison of a cost into this long-term PPA. I know they took issue with the length of it. To me, this was a little more on second guessing the decision that the utility, they have an obligation to serve. They had to go do something. Should they have maybe communicated with their customers prior to? Maybe, but better customer relations isn't a requirement. It's not a sign of imprudency here. It was just, for me, difficult to find the argument that what the utility did here was unreasonable or imprudent given their obligation to serve. And again, I thought Mr. Gorman's attempt to try to distinguish the cost here he was comparing an apples to oranges situation. So I'm alternative 1. I think that the PPA is reasonable.
Okay. Commissioner Hebner?
yeah, thank you. To me, the biggest sticking point on this one was my belief that they should have done a request for proposal. Understanding that not all bidders respond, and in this case, their current supplier, decided not to respond to their outreach. But just, we know that there may, I guess we don't know that there weren't other options. And that's where I'm a little bit hung up. And so ultimately forced to choose between alternative 1 and alternative 2, I agree with you both that the ultimate cost differential here, the capacity product that was purchased through that agreement was a firm 10-year agreement that is different than a day ahead or a year ahead capacity on the market. However, I do think that they should have had a more robust process. And I think getting their customers' inputs as to what those needs were. Again, it's such a unique utility where you've got 3 customers driving 99% of the usage. To me, if you've got 1 million customers, there's a lot of different things that you're balancing. When you have really 3 huge customers, having a really clear understanding of what they want and need, what they're willing to pay for and not, I thought seemed to be missing here and an opportunity for improvement. So I'm sort of in between alternative 1 and 2. Since you're both at alternative 1, I think it's moot, but I would I guess dissent at an alternative 3, which would be have them rebid or have them do an RFP and see what other results they could get.
Okay. Moving on to issue 7. This is related to the forecast of the LMP. And for this one, I'm at alt 1. It's a forecast, and actual LMPs incurred will be passed on through their power cost adjustment clause. So I'm at alternative 1. Commissioner Nowak?
Yeah, I agree here as well. And, there's the PCAC clause trues up any difference here. Again, I thought the utilities testimony here was spot on.
Commissioner Huebner?
Yeah, again, I was at alternative 3 here. I would have taken the average of the 2. It seemed like both the utility and the commission staff got to the spot where they thought averaging the 2 would not be unreasonable. So that was persuasive to me, and I would have been at alternative 3.
Okay.
So you'll dissent, Commissioner Huebner?
Yes.
Any energy efficiency.
Okay. Issue 8. This is rate of return. For this one,
Thank you.
I do not have a handout. You guys thought I was going to give you a Christmas gift, but I'm not. But I did ask Mike Bates to run to just help me understand the difference between alternative 1 and alternative 2. So there was a substantial amount of evidence as to what the appropriate rate of return is. And there was a discussion about gradualism and sort of where the company has been versus where it's going. And now you have Verso coming in, arguing a different position than it took in the last go round. And so currently the company is at a 6.4% return on equity. And they make the argument that that ROE is too low, and that it ignores the risks that the company faces, particularly as it relates to its industrial load. So they even say that 8% is too low of an ROE. I was between alt 1 and alt 2. I think going up to 10% is too high. I think 6% is too low. I even looked at kind of landing somewhere in the middle, and trying to maintain our long-standing practice of utilizing gradualism. But at the end of the day, where I ended was Alt 2, which is 8%, but based on 60% equity, 40% debt. And it's a small difference, but the calculation is that under Alt 2, due to the difference in income tax expense, the revenue requirement under Alt 2 would be about $167,000 lower than Alt 1. So I landed at Alt 2. Commissioner Nowak.
Well, you just basically described my thought process throughout this one as well. Yeah, I also went back and looked at the different scenarios and even looked at something in between 6 and 6.4 where they're at. 6 is too low, 10 is too high. I threw those out. And was very concerned about moving so fast to 8. But you have to look, I think, at the larger financial impact of this company and long-term movement that needs to happen. So, yeah, as you mentioned, there's a smaller cost, not much, but smaller impact on the revenue impact with Alt 2 imputing that debt, which again is not an unreasonable thing to do since it does reflect their current situation. So ultimately, yeah, I was hovering between 1 and 2 like you as well, and could land at 2. We'll see where Commissioner Huebner is at, but this was a long winding road to get to where I was at, and not a signal for other, this is a unique situation. I think, to find their peer utilities is a difficult thing to do. So this shouldn't be a signal to other IOUs in this state that we're ready to start jacking up ROEs.
Right.
So that is not the message to send here, but
No.
Yeah. So I can join you at 2.
Okay. Commissioner Huebner?
Yeah, just as a threshold matter, I did think that it was appropriate to move to the equity debt structure where the PPA is essentially imputed debt. The credit agencies look at it in that way. It is an obligation to pay similar to a straight loan or debt. So I was in agreement with moving to 60% equity, 40% debt, and my proposal was going to be to gradually move. They were at 6. They're at 6.4. Essentially, to move to 6.8%, which would be the math would be the 5% cost of debt for the debt portion, and an 8% ROE for the equity portion, and then when you add those together, that's 6.8%. So that's where I was at.
Okay. I think that's. I'm not going to join you, but I follow that line of thinking. I just think in briefings with staff, the range that was given was higher than that. It was the low end of the range was in the upper 7s. And so kind of similar to what Commissioner Nowak said, I threw out 6 and I threw out 10. So I was starting, those were my bookends. I was starting in between. And I think in this unique circumstance, I think setting it at 8% based on 60% equity, 40% debt is the right move. So I'm going to stay at Alt 2.
And I'll just maybe reiterate, I think it's a really good discussion about risk and reward. And so I appreciated all the testimony on this. And again, kind of where I landed was was in this really tough spot where the biggest risk to this utility is that another paper mill goes under, and yet the best way to try to avoid that risk is to moderate the rate increases to minimize that risk, at least from an energy cost perspective. So was where I landed at a lower number.
Okay. Commissioner Nowak, any parting thoughts?
I'm just gonna stay where I'm at just because I have to get past the number, that leap, and look at what the data had showed. And as you mentioned, that 6-8 would be in that low end of things, and I think here we need to be a little more. It's the record here showed that being a little more aggressive was appropriate. Not aggressive like 10, but I can stay at 8.
Okay.
So stay at.
Okay. Issue 9. This is the dividend restriction. Here, Verso's going from customer to owner, and they have requested the ability to remove the restriction on dividend payments that we have in there. Again, I understand. I don't necessarily think that that's an unreasonable request, but I want to wait for the audit results from issue 3 before making a decision on this. So I would like to look under the hood first, and I'd like our audit to proceed. And then if the results of the audit indicate that it's reasonable, then I'll entertain the request. They can make the request again. So for this one, I'm at Alt 1. I would not modify the dividend restrictions. Commissioner Nowak?
Yeah, I agree. I'm at Alt 3. It's a very incremental step if it's taken, but subject to some audit findings, I think that then it could be appropriate. So Alt 3.
So I'm just gonna, from a process standpoint, I was a little confused between the difference of Alt 1 and Alt 3, which is why I ended at Alt 1. So in my mind, Alt 3 was giving them the green light, and then the audit would press the red light, where I want to start at the red light, and if the audit demonstrates that it's reasonable, then I would switch from red light to green light.
Okay. I read Alt 3 as saying red light until audit says okay.
Okay. I'm at the same spot. So we'll hear what Commissioner Huebner says, but
we can go red light, green light,
right.
red rover, all that good stuff.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure Verso's request is to issue a dividend up to 10%.
Right. So they want the green light right away.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I would wait. Yeah, I would wait.
Okay.
What about you, Commissioner Huebner? Red light or green light?
Well, I think I can join you. Yeah. I think I can join you. Would you propose that after the audit's done, would we take that up outside of a rate case, I guess, in the intervening period? If they don't come in for a rate case for a few years, is this something because my understanding is this is not a revenue requirement issue. This is the net income that's flowing, and then whether or not that should be retained by the utility to build future things or whatever, or some of it should be paid out to its owners. So my thought is, if we do that we could take this up outside of a rate case. And I'm wondering if that's what you were thinking too?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
It's not tied to a rate case.
Okay.
Right.
Because again, I think from a risk perspective and an investor perspective, I'm okay with this, actually. So I was actually at Alt 3, but I'm going to join you at the Alt 1 with let's do the audit, and then as long as there's no issues, we can issue this in between rate cases. So it doesn't have to wait till the next rate case.
Okay. Cindy and Martin, is that clear to you guys?
It's clear. I just asked the finance staff if that is okay, or does that get into messing with the other financial components that we're setting in the order. I since I've been here, I don't recall taking up a dividend restriction outside of a rate case. That doesn't mean we can't, but I'm wondering if there's a broader fiscal interrelationship there that maybe we're not grasping.
Okay.
Yep, and I'll defer to Mike if you want to jump on. I don't believe there is, but Mike, if you're there and you can jump on and just confirm that. Okay. No, I think we're good. I think we understand the direction of that, and we will, yes, based on the previous commission discussion, we will make sure we get the audit going and get that done as quickly as possible so that you have that information before another rate case.
Okay. Okay. Issue 10 is cost of service study. This was uncontested. Issue 11 is revenue allocation. For this one, I accept commission staff's proposed revenue allocation because it conforms with, and it was not conforms, that's the wrong word. Influenced is the word that's used in our matrix. So I'm going with Alt 1. Commissioner Nowak?
Yeah, these were incredibly close proposals, and I can go with commission staff on this one.
Yep. Okay. Commissioner Huebner?
Yep, I was at alternative 1 with commission staff.
Okay. Issue 12, again, I'm at alternative 1, accepting commission staff proposed rate design. Commissioner Nowak?
Right, I will follow that since we went their proposal, Alt 1.
Okay. Commissioner Huebner?
Yep, I'm at Alt 1 for that as well.
Okay. Issue 13, power factor provision, should it be added? Consolidated's witness, Kavita Miney, proposed a power factor provision. There are some reliability concerns if the company's load increases. And so in order to mitigate the reliability concerns, the company either needs a power factor provision in this particular tariff, or they need the ability to eliminate the cap on interruptions. I think, the customers have already indicated that they understand they are voluntarily being placed on a service that puts them at risk to be interrupted. And I think the addition of the power factor provision makes a whole lot of sense. And it puts the company in the position of being able to better operate more reliably. So for this one, I'm at Alt 1, and I would approve the addition of that power factor provision to this S2I customer class. Commissioner Nowak?
Yeah, I there was a lot of passion about this one, it seemed, in the record, and disagreement, which, as I think the utility pointed out, these usually aren't controversial, but where I landed is that there was very strong disagreement from these customers, how to balance this cost versus risk. And given the idling of the Wisconsin mill, the Rapids mill, I think the necessity to get this thing rolling right away has been relieved a bit. So the customers indicated they had some different ideas on how to work it out, and maybe they, I think we have the time to have them go work this out. If they don't, then I would have Consolidated ask again for this when they come back into their next rate case, which will probably be soon. So I was at, even at alternative 3, then because they are interruptible, if something would happen to occur where there is a situation where there is a constraint, then they should be able to have more hours interrupted. But I think that there's some time, given the idling of the mill, that the urgency of this has lessened. So I'm at alt 3.
Okay. Commissioner Hebner?
Yeah, I was actually at alternative 3 as well on this. It seemed like the concept was correct from an engineering perspective. Commissioner Nowak, as you said, one of the challenges is now been reduced, and that changed from when this was first filed to how this case has evolved. But I also think that the company's made a good point that the power factor, is set at a certain level for the whole utility, and they're proposing to set that same level for all the customers. There may be a less expensive way to do it if one customer can make a change, and that would allow the whole system to get there. So it's a tough one where I think, it hasn't been controversial where you have a larger utility perhaps and more customers, but you've got 3 and now really 2. So I was sort of at push pause on this, alt 3.
Okay, I can join you guys. It's reasonable.
Just a
I don't feel
clarification.
as passionate.
So is the commissioner do you have a set amount of interruptible hours you're authorizing to increase? I guess I'm trying to understand the difference between alt 1 and alt 3. Alt 3
Oh,
with or without increasing the amount of allowable. So I guess that would be the difference between alt 2 and alt 3.
Right. I did not have a specific number.
I did not either.
I don't either, and I don't know that we want to just pull one out of our hat right now. So we should probably
Work with staff, perhaps.
I think we probably need to take a break on this one.
Yep. Yeah, we need to check in. Okay, so let's
Need to come back to that one.
we'll put a pin in this one. We'll come back. All right, issue 14 is uncontested. Issue 15, this was an interesting one, but I don't think it's our place. I think this is a matter for the courts to decide, not us. So for this one, should we order Consolidated to bill its parent for costs that are emanating from a consent decree? I'm at alt 2. Commissioner Nowak.
Yeah, well, it's been a while since I've even read or looked at the All Writs Act, but that was brought up in the briefing. I also don't think that we are tied to this consent decree. I agreed with Verso here, even if so, whether or not it addresses utility rates, which we are set by this commission, not by, as the consent decree reads, Verso can't unreasonably raise costs. We're the ones setting costs here anyway. So for a variety of reasons, I'm at alternative 2.
Okay, Commissioner Hebner.
Yeah, I also ended up at alternative 2 on this one.
Okay. All right. So do we want to take just a short break right now to revisit issue 13, and then we can come back and we can dive into our last 2 agenda items?
Sounds
Let's
good.
do that. Let's do it.
Wise,
Yeah.
Madam Chair, why don't we say we'll resume at 12:15, because then staff, we can also just go back and double check our notes.
Perfect.
So if I could ask each of the commissioners to go to their breakout rooms, and we will start with you, Chair Bach, to discuss any questions on issue 13. Then we will move to you, Commissioner Nowak, and then to you, Commissioner Hebner. So would staff relevant to 13 please go to Chair Bach's virtual breakout room, and we will reconvene at 12:15.
So we have to leave this meeting and go into our other meeting. Okay.
Correct.
Yep.
Great.
Okay.
We'll be back, Mon. Just we're going to break out and take a break.
Can you put us back on into the World Wide Webs?
Yep, you're on.
Thank you. Okay, we're back. And we just need to wrap up issue 13, which is the power factor provision. So we all took a little break, and I've now changed my mind, and I'm at Alt 2. I would just not approve the addition of the power factor provision.
Sorry, I gotta mute.
It's the amount of allowable interruptible hours is currently at 600 hours. There's no evidence in the record to modify that number. And if the company wants to increase the number of hours, I think it's reasonable to have them file that request as part of a TE docket. So I am at Alt 2. Commissioner Nowak.
Yeah, based upon the fact that there is nothing in the record to support a modification, and that is at risk, given the past history of interruptible hours being exceedingly low, I'm at Alt 2.
Let's do 9:30.
Okay, Commissioner Hebner.
I'm at Alt 2 as well for all those reasons. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Sounds good.
We
Okay.
done?
Finish that
Thanks,
one.
y'all. Take care. Bye.
Yes, we're finished.
You need a motion?
Yeah. I'll move in docket 1330 ER 104 that we approve the application of Consolidated Water Power Company for modification of its rates pursuant to our discussion today.
And I will be second that motion, noting the dissents that I made in our discussion.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. The beat goes on. We're ending this year with a bang. We move on to agenda item 11, which is docket 5350-ER-111. Okay. This is the application of the city of Shawano as an electric public utility for authority to adjust electric rates. So here we are again. Okay, so Shawano Municipal Utilities is seeking an increase of 3.12%, or approximately $693,000. The actual level of the increase is pretty much uncontested. What is not uncontested and what is hotly contested in this case are the issues of cost allocation and rate design. So there is no doubt that there exists some inequities between the CP3 and the CP4 classes. There's also, in my mind, no doubt that the record supports a substantial increase for the CP4 rate class. We can talk about the theories of gradualism, and we can talk about kind of the art and science of revenue allocation. But at the end of the day, this is not going to be an easy decision. I'll just put it there. Again, there was some information filed confidentially about the financial status of one of the customers of SMU. Issue one is what's the overall revenue requirement adjustment for them. And so I think it makes a lot of sense to just go in and start taking up the issues that are not uncontested. So my understanding from the commission secretary is that there's no need to discuss any of the uncontested alternatives. So the first discussion point for us is issue 1B. For this one, the CEO of the utility, Mr. Knapp, pointed out that there were some complications or inconsistencies in commission staff's labor adjustments. And it's my understanding that even though the alternatives in front of us are either A, require it, or B, don't require them to refile their annual reports, my understanding is that if IT can simply open up those reports, then the utility will have the ability to simply update the schedule F05, which my understanding also is that it's already been updated in this case. So I don't necessarily think we need all 3 years of annual reports in their entirety. I think what we're getting at that was identified as an issue of concern is related to the schedule F05. So for this one, I would require that they refile the information, but it's really just a matter of updating that schedule. And my understanding again is that they can accomplish that in a relatively straightforward way. So that's sort of a modified Alt 1. Commissioner Nowak?
Yeah, I was at Alt 2 on this. I just think it's, we're talking about a portion of Schedule F05 is a weird thing for us to start to be putting these types of things into orders. I think it's also, they're mostly there with understanding the information flow back and forth. I think this is one of the things that is typically standardly done between staff and utilities, is just kind of figuring out the filing logistics. And I don't think it's a thing of them not wanting to give us information. If that would be a different reason for discussion. So I think we don't need to go put something so specific in an order. So I'm at Alt 2 on this one.
Okay. Commissioner Huebner?
Madam Chair, I'm at the same spot as you on the modified Alt 1, essentially updating the necessary pages. Functionally, that may be, pushing the button again to refile it once those are adjusted. But I think we're on the same page as far as what's needed to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And commission staff uses that, so I think it's important to have the correct information, because then that feeds into their analysis for future cases. So I think we should do it as you described.
Okay. Okay. The next three issues are uncontested. So we move to the heart of this matter, where we start talking about the appropriate electric cost of service study. There's a really wide range, not only in the cost of service study, but then when we start to talk about revenue allocation. For this one, I'm just going to do what we always do, and that is I'm going to decline to adopt a specific cost of service study model the way that we have in the past. So for this one, I'm at Alt 4. Commissioner Nowak.
Yeah, I agree with that. Although I will note that I typically do give weight. I leave them all in, and some are bookends. But to me, Cubs here was a true bookend. I gave a lot less weight to it because of its use of the locational approach, which I think understates some of the allocation of those customer-related costs. So my focus was primarily on the utilities and staff and the utilities cost of service. But so that's where I ended up, but I'll leave them all in.
Okay, Commissioner Huebner.
Yeah, I too am at alternative 4, and wanted to mention I did appreciate Cub's testimony on this and talking about what some other commissions, specifically the state of Washington, have done, and so certainly leaving it in for now and at alternative 4.
Okay. Next issue is issue 4. What's the appropriate revenue allocation? So as I indicated, and as was noted by the parties to the case, that when we get to revenue allocation, it's part art, part science. We can use the cost of service to kind of provide us with guideposts, Commissioner Nowak, as you call them, bookends. But those cost of service studies aren't the sole input for how rates are eventually designed and how revenues are allocated between the classes. And so we can all pull out our Bond Bright, and we can have a very long and academic conversation about what we think is reasonable. But at the end of the day, again, we as regulators are put in a position where we have to balance what's reasonable, what is supported by cost causation, how to appropriately align cost causation with how rates are designed. And I am particularly sensitive, especially as it relates to large industrial customers and manufacturing customers. I'm sensitive to the impact that energy bills have on customers. I think this is a very difficult case, because in one sense, it's pitting one employer, one large industrial customer against other customers. And that's not a good position for the utility to be in. It's not a good position for the community to be in. It's not a good position for the customers to be in. And so I think our answer lies somewhere in the middle. It's not perfect. It's not a science. And I agree with Aerocast that rate shock has to be avoided or at least mitigated to a large extent as possible. Now, Aerocast comes in and says absolutely nothing above 7%. And again, what's interesting to me is that there's no factual dispute that as they are formulated right now, the current CP4 rates are deficient, and they're deficient to a pretty high level, about $1 million a year. That deficiency doesn't just go away. It gets picked up by other customers, other employers within the community, and other customers of the municipal utility. All that being said, I think it needs to be corrected. And so there's a wide range of allocation possibilities in front of us. And not surprisingly, right, the revenue allocation sort of depends on who's putting it forward. So in this particular case, Aerocast, proposes that 7%, that hard stop at 7%. And then it seems to me that then they sort of worked, kind of backed into the remaining allocations for the revenue allocations. CUB, consistent with its cost of service model, allocated a pretty high proportion to the CP4 customers, while again, knowing who they're representing, with a very minimal increase to the residential customers. I think that commission staff and the utility were closest in my mind to a range of reasonableness. Again, there is no perfect answer, but for me, I ended at alternative 1. I think that staff's revenue allocation follows what they filed for their cost of service study, and it gets us closer to where we need to be. So this is not easy by any stretch of the imagination, but for this one, I would accept commission staff's proposed revenue allocation, which is Alt 1. Commissioner Nowak?
Yeah, as you noted, this is a very difficult situation for everybody, and it's really interesting. First of all, the briefs were, to the extent that we can be entertained, they were entertaining in a way from all the parties, and lots of discussion about bond rate and principles we need to give greater weight to as well. Obviously, we all agree this CP4 rate must be fixed. How fast we have to do it is the question. We've in the past, we've known about this problem for a few years. We've said try to go work this out. Clearly, that hasn't worked. And so I'm not going to be naive and say, let's just go along a little bit and work it out again, because that's a waste of time. Wholeheartedly understand what the interveners request here to rip the Band-Aid off and fix it today. I get that. But on the other hand, as you mentioned, Aerocast argues for gradualism, moderation, avoidance, or mitigation, I think is a better word, of rate shocks. All those things are absolutely what we must keep in mind, and something that I have always followed too when we faced similar situations. I don't think one quite as stark as this in the past that I can recall. What I also want to note that this is, it's like trying to pit one industry against another here, and that, so there was a lot of discussion about, who does more in the community, who has more charitable giving, employees, and who received a that to me was not relevant to this. What is relevant is our principles here of rate setting, but also understanding that there is an impact to all of the entities that we're about to address here. So, you know, that stuff didn't play a role in my decision making here, though, that type of discussion. Now, I continue to believe that we've got to keep all the principles in mind when we're correcting this problem, but what I evolved to is that the gradualism needs to pick up the pace here. We've got to be more than we're like trotting along here. We've got to do not a 5-minute mile, but maybe closer to an 8-minute mile. And we got to pick it up a little here because
primarily or exclusively?
It's just, we got to push more on the fairness side because again, the incremental approaches we've taken in the past just aren't getting there. And as the interveners pointed out, if the load from AeroPass grows, then it just the hole gets bigger, if you will, right? So we want to avoid that.
So that's the main driver of the story. However, I'm
not ready to rip that Band-Aid off today. But I think we need to get there faster than what's been proposed by even staff and the utility. I have a handout, so Stephanie can circulate that where I know.
Just given that right now, yeah, we're talking about commercial, but
ideally, I'd like to get this fixed in 2 years.
Here are some of the ways that
so it's, you know, and it's not that this is going to be
national code.
The parties to all of this proceeding have known about this problem. This isn't like we just discovered this flaw in the rate 3 months ago. This has been building and it needs to be addressed sooner rather than later. So I have a handout that you guys, if we want to take a break or, you know, maybe hear from Commissioner Huebner, but I've pushed up the CP4 class to about an 11% increase. I've held several of the classes flat because I think overall I worked from a base of the staff's, I used their revenue allocation as my base. And I held the RG1, RG2, RG1, the GS1, CP2 and lighting all flat where they were at. I didn't modify those, modified the CP4 to move it up, which obviously impacted the other classes, made slight modifications then to the GS, GS2 and CP1 classes to kind of fix those a little more. So it ends up with about just shy of a, where are we at for CP3? Just shy of a 2% decrease for CP3 and about 11. You know, it's going to change based on their final number. So I don't want to get hung up on the final percentages, but I tried to keep, the increase for the CP4 customer between 3.5 to 4 times the overall average, which is a lot. I understand that.
Making the statewide code,
the gradualism of the past hasn't worked. So that's why I took that one. So I kept it. It's closer. I think that's about a 3.6 times the overall average is where I kept that one. So I don't know. Do you guys have the handout?
Yep.
Oh, okay, cool.
I have it.
So that is my proposal, that we push this a little faster. I don't take great joy in any of this because it is hard to deliver these types of messages, but this is a subsidy that has existed and it's got to be addressed, I think, sooner rather than longer term than what it's going to take.
Okay. Commissioner Huebner, do you have thoughts or a handout?
I do not have a handout. So I guess that's good. No dueling handouts. As you both said it, I mean, I think you've said everything that needs to be said. This is not an easy decision when there's such a small set of customers involved. It's just very hard, you know, for the community. So the way I was looking at this is, 2016 is when it looked like a rate case happened, and then the problem seemed to be essentially exacerbated after that point. And because of a few things. Number one, the second biggest customer was pulled out of the largest class, leaving Aerocast by itself. Secondly, the rates were essentially adjusted in that, and the PCAC was either added or adjusted in that case. And then based on whatever the sales volume was projected, Aerocast actually increased their sales pretty substantially over the intervening 3 or 4 years that we have data for. And so what was, perhaps initially a small sort of intra-class subsidy grew because Aerocast's load went up, and they adjusted their load as they talked about based on the rates. Right. And now we are in this situation. So the way I was going at this was a two-prong approach. One was gradualism on the overall revenue allocation, as you both described. But then in the next issue that we'll have to deal with, essentially dealing with that gradualism through the utilities proposed approach, which is to fix the rates and to align the costs for demand and for energy with what the costs that Shawano sees, but then essentially adjust the subsidy number to reflect gradualism. So that's the two-prong approach I will be coming at this with. I would be fine with taking a break. I was leaning towards where staff's 7.46% increase for CP4 on this. So, but my head had a range between 7 and 10% of sort of what I thought was the reasonable and fair spot. So 11%, where you are, Commissioner Nowak, is very close to that range. So. I don't know, Chair Bach, if you want to add any more comments, if you think we should take a break. Or if you want to talk about rate design, and then maybe we take a break, because I'd be curious to know where you two are at on that.
Yeah, maybe let's talk about rate design. Let's go through. I think, Commissioner Nowak, I think you hit the nail on the head. Although I think instead of going from a 5-minute mile to an 8-minute mile, we want to go the other way. We want to go from an 8-minute mile to a 5-minute mile. Yeah. But I think, I think you're absolutely correct. And I'm all in favor of getting to where we need to be sooner rather than later. And I will just echo your comments. I actually. I found this sort of back and forth about charitable giving and who's availed themselves of what program, and I just, not only were they red herrings for me, but it wasn't appropriate, and it wasn't germane to the issue and the decision that we have in front of us, quite frankly. So why don't we keep going, and then I think after we keep going, I'd like to take a break.
Yeah, and before we hit on the rate design, I just to add one more nugget on, I think that we should, and I'm not always a big fan of requiring utilities to come in, but I think we should require the utility to come in either as a full or a limited reopener as part of, if we go up to where I was at, or maybe even not if you guys don't go there, but to include another proposed revenue allocation that, in my first preference would be to then eliminate the interclass subsidy or make another very strong step towards significantly reducing that. And they should file it by July 31 of 2021. So this isn't, 3 years later, they file a next step. I'd like to see something filed next year. So a year from now, we can sit here and do this.
Yeah, and I will certainly give that some thought too. I mean, one of the things that came to mind as was brought up in the record is the way the rate design is currently. Essentially, the more Aerocast uses, the bigger the problem becomes, and the less they use, essentially the problem goes down. I was really curious to see how the pandemic, it looks like their sales are down in 2020 for the months that we have compared to 2019. And so my thought more of maybe the 7 or 7.5% was sort of, if we move that direction and then fix the rate design, if there's reduced sales, do we get some tailwinds from that in addressing this problem as well if we come back in a year or 2 years, whatever the right timeline is? So that just wanted to give you some of my thinking on how those all interrelate.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. Commissioner Nowak, do you have a proposed rate design to go along with the revenue allocation, or?
So my thinking on the rate design, and I think if I'm understanding Commissioner Huebner correctly, I think we're kind of I'm at the inverse where, since my proposal makes a big change on the allocation, and it's a big step then and as I use the staff allocation as my base to stick with the staff rate design here, wait to make those other large modifications to see how this, because this is what I believe, I thought this made the biggest component of the subsidy, to make that step first and then see how that plays out. And then when they come back in next year, if they have enough information, then we can address some of the other rate design issues should they be necessary. So my thinking was more play this one out. So I was at accepting staff's rate design, not make all those big leaps. Let's make this one leap, see where it goes. And then we'll, like I said, be here in a year.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Huebner, then you're kind of.
Yeah. Did you have I don't think you gave us your insights on 5A.
Well, I was going to go. I was as of last night, I was leaning towards ripping the Band-Aid off even more than Commissioner Nowak proposes. And because of that, I was going to accept Commission staff's proposed rate design.
Okay.
But now you're at 7%. Were you? Sorry, Tyler. But
go ahead.
Now I don't know where I am.
Okay.
Okay. And the reason I thought maybe changing the rate design, it's a very unique situation what SMU proposes, and I think it's worth noting at the top that Shawano has very competitive rates. Mm-hmm. They have very low rates, as was in the record, for their customers overall and for this class. So I think that's a credit to them that they've been able to find and negotiate good power costs, et cetera. But my thinking was ultimately the utility wants to get essentially to passing through, their costs from their power marketer upstream down directly to this industrial customer. What we have now is the rates are misaligned, where the energy charges are higher and the demand charges are lower than what ultimately is provided upstream. And I think that's where some of the challenge has been, is that Aerocast changes its behavior to reduce its costs, but that behavior change doesn't necessarily equate to the same savings that Shawano as a utility sees. So that's kind of why I thought if we align the rates and it shows this customer exactly what they would be charged, but essentially the subsidy that's built into the Shawano proposal would be higher than what they propose because we're not going all the way there. They will see exactly what their bill will ultimately be, and they'll see what their current subsidy is, and then that will make it easier for us to go down the road. They can start aligning their usage with the price signal they're ultimately going to see. And then 1 or 2 or 3 cycles later, however many it takes, ultimately the subsidy would go down appropriately, or as future commissions decide based on that class allocation. So that's the way I was seeing it, is gradualism on the overall, but the actual design would go to SMU's design.
Okay. Okay. I think I would like to take a break.
Yeah.
And I think now is the appropriate time, because I think once we get into the PCAC, I think our decisions on these two items will inform that decision. So how about we take, what do you guys think? 10 minutes? Do we even need?
I think we're going to need, I think we're going to need, yeah.
Yeah,
I'd
because we have the breakout rooms. Sorry, I forgot about that. Okay. What do you think?
1:15.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
That sounds
And
good.
just for those listening at home, Commissioner Nowak's handout is available on the event calendar, lower right-hand side. Staff, if again, we'll do the same order. Commissioner Nowak, would you still like to speak with staff?
Yeah.
Or okay.
Yep. Yep.
So we'll start with Chair Bach, then go to you, Commissioner Nowak, and then we'll join you, Commissioner Huebner. So
Thank you.
Okay.
To the breakout rooms.
All right. Thank you.
Hi, John Schultz, please. This is Chris Hubbuck. Thank you. Good. How are you, John? I know. Yeah, I know. But on the other hand, I wonder if like if everything, you know, everything went back to normal somehow tomorrow, like it would be kind of nice to just go like leave the house. So I don't know. But yeah, I kind of feel like I would hate to be heavily invested in a movie theater right now. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know. But it does seem weird to even think about going to a movie theater right now. Yeah, my wife is always like pointing at, she's like, well, this is clearly pre-COVID. Like, so strange. Building codes um, at the very general level. So, I mean, just to set the stage, yeah, the governor's climate task force report that came out last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago now.
Come on.
Oh,
The beat
PSC.
goes on. Can you turn us
They were in
back on,
closed
please?
session and they just
Yep,
came back.
you're on.
and repeated it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay.
So the climate
We
task
are
force
back.
report came out a couple weeks
And
ago. It identified
building
code as a
so
an
for
area where
revenue
the
allocation,
use of energy
which is issue 4,
and
I am
now the
I'm going to go with Commissioner Nowak's
PSPS just
proposed
started
staff
last
revenue
week, the rulemaking
allocation.
process to update the
And
commercial
then
building.
I'm going to accept
And then-
Commission
but with
staff's
the understanding that they're
proposed
probably gonna
rate
come back
design.
here to
So
do the
that puts me at,
and I should be clear, do you
alt,
guys represent commercial builders, residential builders?
there isn't
both?
really an alt.
Alt 7.
So alt 7, Commissioner Nowak's proposed revenue allocation for
Okay,
for that one, and then alt 1 for issue 5A. And I think Commissioner Nowak, that's where you
Yeah,
were
exactly.
before.
It is,
we-
Okay.
yeah. And
so obviously you're more affected.
thank you. I mean,
by
I
this first
like I said,
round
I
of code updates.
wish we didn't
I
have
guess
to
the
do
question
this,
is,
but I thought we needed to take a bigger step than it's been done in the past.
in this next round of code.
So
I agree.
And,
Yep. And I,
how do you feel about
Commissioner Hebner, I appreciate your
what would that?
proposal as well. I just feel like in the interest of getting to where we need to be sooner rather than later. And again, this is not easy. It's not easy at all. And there's no one perfect answer but in the interest of trying
In other
to
words,
get
they do
where
what the
I think
customers want.
these rates need to be, I think that going this route with Commissioner Nowak's proposed revenue allocation and then staying with staff's rate design gets us there in a faster way, yet still in a responsible way. Commissioner Huebner?
Yep. I will join you with Commissioner Nowak's on the revenue allocation piece, and a little bit bigger than I was thinking coming in, but I think the sentiment is there and the signal is sent that we understand this is an issue and we need to address it. And I'm hopeful this does that in a meaningful way, as you both said. On the rate design, I will be sticking with alternative 2 and continuing to look at how the utility thought of this to really send those price signals directly through to that customer. I think that would have been the better approach, but I understand where you're both at and not wanting to make too big changes at once. The other thing I wanted to just note on this is a note kind of to the utility and to Badger Power Marketing and sort of upstream is staff reminded me in our briefing here how for similar municipalities where WPPI is serving them, that WPPI is starting to pull apart those rates. So right now, Badger Power is sending one demand charge, and it's not even a coincident peak demand charge through to Shawano. And there was some in the transcript, some discussion of where that $23 comes in, and part of it is about $15 or $16 is from their power provider. Some of it, most of the rest is from ATC as transmission charges. And I think that would be a really good thing for Shawano to be looking at upstream with Badger Power Marketing is, do we need to better understand what those costs are and pass those signals on to customers as we're starting to see WPPI utilities do. So that will be my final note on that topic. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Huebner.
If I may just get clarification whether you and Commissioner Huebner are also, Commissioner Nowak had added on issue 5 a filing condition for whether it's a limited or a full rate case by July 31, 2021. And given that timing, Commissioner Nowak, my understanding that is for a 2021 test year. And
that's my preference. I know it's fast, but we've seen them often, so they 2021, I think we should address it, otherwise it won't be addressed till 2022. So where you guys are at on that?
So a filing by July of 2021 for
so they for the 21 test year, like they did for this year.
I think that's okay. It seems pretty tight, doesn't it?
Yeah, my view on, I wouldn't agree. I don't think we want to do it for next year. And the main reason I'm thinking is because of the pandemic and trying to understand how this customer's load is going to change. It's just a very strange time. So my thought would be looking really 2 years out. So letting this run for a full year, and then we can see what the rate design and allocation changes have really meant with 12 months of data. That would be my thought on that.
Yeah. What about a December 2021 filing, looking at a 22 test year? I'm also worried that we might see a whole lot of other rate filings in that same time frame.
Yeah.
So I would go with a I just think July's too tight. I get it. I respect that position, but I just think it's too tight, especially with everything else that we're going to have going on.
Right. I mean,
So
Maybe
I would.
one-
it seems like
Go ahead.
maybe you.
Well, I was going to say maybe one thing just to leave it.
Would you say that the
I mean,
uniformity
maybe they
is more
want
important than
to
anything
come
else?
in faster. Maybe we can say no later than for test year 2022. The utility's got to be back in here.
I'd be okay
And
with that.
Not put a date on when they have to make that filing. And if they want to make a filing for 2021, they can, if they think they can get it done. And if for some reason they think they can work with the customers.
Yep. I think
Yeah.
that makes sense. That's reasonable. I can live with that. Commissioner Huebner?
I guess I would disagree and just I'm not sure how this is going to play out. So I think it should be driven by when the company thinks it needs, when the utility thinks it needs to address either this issue or
Not to
something
have a
else, but not
patchwork.
necessarily require it.
Okay. Not even a no later than. You would just leave it alone.
Yeah, I would leave it open at
And
this
so,
point. Yeah.
so your fear
Okay.
is that
Okay.
as you
I'm gonna
start to up
join-
the energy standards,
Well, I think I'm
it's
joining
gonna
you,
add costs
Commissioner Noack.
and
Mhm.
Yeah.
If you're fine with a no
result
later
in less
than.
building.
Is that clear,
Yeah.
Cindy?
Yeah, so it would be a test year requirement, which pursuant to the municipal deadlines would be no later than July 31
But
of
it would also cost
2021.
less to heat.
No, July 31 of
2022.
2022.
Yeah, right.
But we can leave it just as they must come in for a 2022 test and no later than for a 2022 test year.
Either come in for a limited reopener or however they want to file it. So limited, full case, if it's going to be sooner, then maybe they come in sooner with a limited.
Sure.
But
Yeah,
they
well,
have to
I
have
mean, that's
some
assuming
filing
that
for
they
some
have built.
2020,
I mean,
no later than a
the person building
2022
the
test
building
year.
is gonna-
Got it.
is
Yep.
gonna occupy
Okay.
it as opposed to building.
Okay.
Selling
All right.
it.
So PCAC,
Yeah.
given the
Their cost
change
to run it.
to the revenue allocation, I'm going to be at Alt 4, and I'm just going to keep the status quo
So overall,
as
you would prefer not to
as
update the
proposed
code at all.
in Alt 4. Commissioner
Yeah.
Nowak.
Yeah, I felt that while it's feasible to make the changes within the rate design, I think accepting all the rate design with
Yeah.
one position or the other made sense. And again, consistent with the large change we're going to make in the allocation, leaving this where it is now makes sense. And again, we may have to modify it later.
Right.
Mhm.
Agreed. Commissioner Huebner?
Yeah.
I had been at alternative 2, which was again consistent with Shawano. So I think I'll just stay there, consistent
Yeah.
with rate design. So
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Issue 5C.
All right.
This would be
John, you're the director of Legal and Government Affairs.
to
Okay.
require
That's
reporting
CHUL.
conditions. So for this one, I'm at Alt 1 since
Okay.
I don't think
Um,
anything needs to be
I'm
done.
sure this won't be the last time
So
we talk
Alt
about
1.
it. This is
Commissioner
a
Nowak?
couple-year process. We're just at the front.
Yeah, I was going to go with the Alt 3 since we didn't pick one up and say go back and try to work on it again.
For sure. Yeah.
We kind of did that last time and
All
this is
right.
what we got.
Good. Well,
So-
thanks for your time.
Just
Good
because we
talking
don't
to
put it in here doesn't mean they can't work on it together
you. Yeah, you
and
too.
try to figure
Bye.
something out. So I guess I'm okay with Alt 1.
Okay. Commissioner Huebner?
yeah, I'm fine with that as well. I had been at Alt 2 kind of consistently, but I'm fine with Alt 1 on this one. Thank you.
Okay. And then our final issue is 5D. How should the revised dollar amounts be allocated among the customer classes? So for this one, I'm at Alt 1. Commissioner Nowak?
Yeah, and that's kind of consistent with how we typically done that. And I had the revenue allocation. I'm in Alt 1.
Okay. Commissioner Huebner?
Yep, I'm at alternative 1 as well. I thought alternative 2 was a creative attempt by the paper companies to sort of get whatever reductions are approved, get them applied to their class, and I don't begrudge them for arguing that, but I think alt 1 is where we've traditionally been and is the most fair way to do it. So alt 1.
Okay, agreed. Okay,
For a motion, are you guys good?
everybody good?
I'm
Cindy?
good, Martin. We're all set for motion then.
I will move in docket 5350 ER 111 that we approve pursuant to the discussion today, the application of Shawano Municipal Utilities for an application for a modification of its rates.
I will second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, our next item is a closed session item. So may I have a motion to move into closed session?
Yeah. I move that pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 1985 sub 1 sub G, we move into closed session to discuss the agenda item related to agenda item 12 with legal counsel, and then we will reconvene the open meeting pursuant to 1985 sub 2 upon conclusion of our discussion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're in closed.
All right, you're on.
Okay, we are reconvening the open meeting pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 1985 Sub 2. While we were in closed session, we provided guidance to our legal counsel for docket 3160-WI-100. And with that, our official business for the day, this marathon is over. Our next open meeting is scheduled for Thursday, January 7th, 2021 at 1 p.m. Note the change in start time. I wish you guys all a very Merry Christmas and a happy and healthy New Year. And I will take a motion to adjourn.
Yes, I move that we stand adjourned until Thursday, January 7th, 2021 at 1 p.m.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right. Whew.
Hey, Tom. I'm good. How about you? Yeah. Oh my God. I don't. Did they come back out of their? So it's adjourned now. Okay.